Monday after church, Reverend Judy Hefner and I drove down to Chautauqua Lake for the first diocesan clergy convention that I have been able to attend. During the convention, there was a lot of discussion of today's readings and ideas for preaching on them. And one part of the gospel seemed to trouble many of us, to the point that several of us were inclined not to preach on the gospel at all, but rather just concentrate on Ezekiel and his vision of dry bones. After hearing that Lazarus was ill, Jesus stayed where he was in Galilee for 2 more days. He did not rush to Judea. Now, one could point out that even if he had rushed down, Jesus would have shown up at least 1 day, if not 2 days late. After all, Lazarus was in the tomb 4 days when Jesus finally got to Bethany. But still, Mary's recrimination, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died," rings true. Jesus could have saved Lazarus even if he was in Galilee, and chose not to. He allowed nature to take its course, knowing that it was his friends, people who had offered him love and hospitality whenever he had gone to Jerusalem for the festivals. Jesus allowed tragedy to strike this little family. Now, it is possible that Mary and Martha would have been able to continue to eke out a livelihood without their brother. But often, the loss of the male householder meant poverty and disgrace for women. So interlaced with the devastation of losing their brother was also the devastating insecurity for Mary and Martha that would have come with losing their voice in society and their primary breadwinner. And so, interspersed with their belief that Jesus is the resurrection and the life, and their mourning of their brother, and their comfort in having Jesus visit, is a bitterness. Why did their friend Jesus? Why did the Messiah? Why did God allow their brother to be taken from them? It is a bitterness and a questioning that many of us have felt in our own lives and seen in others. For those who believe in God, whose love is expressed through material reward, such tragedies can be irreconcilable to their belief. So either they turn to blame, maybe I did something, maybe someone else did something, maybe my loved one did something that broke covenant with God and caused God's just punishment. Or they turn from God completely. I cannot believe in a God who allows, or worse, causes bad things to happen to good people. When I was doing chaplaincy work at Children's, it was the parents who most clearly espoused the belief that everything was in God's hands that were most devastated and lost their faith in God the quickest if their child passed away. And it is the voice of these parents and of people who have endured unspeakable horrors that I hear echoed in Mary's words. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother, my sister, my daughter, my son, my mother, my father, my entire family would not have died." And I think when we hear that Jesus wept, we need to put that weeping into the context of these words. Jesus knew that he was coming to bring Lazarus back to life. He as much as said so to the apostles. The idea that he was mourning his friend's death does not fit the narrative. And the crowd of people, the Jews, as John describes them, because after all, they and the vast majority of people in the stories of the New Testament, including Jesus, Mary, Martha, and all the apostles, were Jewish, infer that Jesus was weeping for Lazarus. And too often we take that inference at face value. But the crowd in John was usually wrong. They saw the superficial and missed the deep. So if Jesus was not weeping for Lazarus, why did Jesus weep? And if Jesus could have kept Lazarus from death, why did he not do so? John tells us that Jesus let Lazarus die to show forth a sign, to demonstrate that Jesus really was the Messiah. To this one time, show greater power than Elijah and Elisha. not merely raising someone up from the point of death or soon afterward, but to resuscitate someone who had been in the grave 4 days, bringing back to full human life someone whose flesh had begun to rot and from whom the stench of decay could be detected, despite boulder acting as a stopper to keep it contained and bottles of perfume used to cover the odor. In this sign, Jesus demonstrated that he was the fullest expression of all that the prophets had been. But then why did Jesus weep? Jesus hurt someone. Or more appropriately, he allowed someone to be hurt. Jesus, without sinning, nonetheless caused real pain to those he loved. Jesus, the Word made flesh, God among us, love personified, hurt someone. And not just one person, but 2 named people, Mary and Martha and everyone else who loved Lazarus. And Jesus was faced with the pain that he caused, a pain that he knew would be all that much worse when he allowed himself to be crucified. Being God means loving all and being with those suffering. But being human means feeling the pain and guilt of not intervening to stop others from suffering. Jesus could have kept them from this pain, but it was the pain that comes with being human and the pain that brings something new into being. And it is nonetheless pain. And watching someone you love endure that pain, even when you know it will lead to something new and a growth in humanity's ability to be the image of God that they were created to be, means guilt and pain for oneself. That is the God I believe in. God who suffers with us and feels guilt and pain for allowing us to suffer, even as they know that suffering is part of being human, part of the free will that we as humans so desperately need. Amen.